This episode of Repeat is brought to you by Corel Video Studio X10.5, the ultimate in video editing software. Enjoy complete creativity with Video Studio Ultimate X10. Express yourself with over 2,000 customizable effects, including the valuable Premium Effects Collection. New effect layering and masking give you even more control. For your best movies and the best value, the only choice is Ultimate. Visit www.videostudiopro.com for more information. Situational awareness, the ability to make appropriate decisions based on environmental influences. Every minute of every day we evaluate and moderate our behavior based on the people we're with, the location we are at, and even the clothing that we wear. There are powerful forces at work inside every one of our minds, constantly trying to pull us in one direction or another. Some people have mastered the balance between these ever-opposing forces, always saying the right thing at the right time. Others, not so much. But imagine if you could personify these emotional factors and watch these battles of intuitions play out in front of you during those important decision gates of your life. In 1991, a then-fledgling network known as the Fox Broadcasting Company aired a situational comedy that did just that. For 3 seasons, the audience got to peek inside Fright Night's William Ragsdale's head and watch 4 very funny personas duke it out for control over his actions. This show was called Herman's Head. I'm Shane Monroe, and you're listening to Repeat.
That woman's not wearing underwear.
Is that all you can think about? Food and sex?
Yes.
To discuss Herman's Head, we have to discuss the early years of the Fox television network. While Fox is a big network now, they're relatively newcomers to the industry. The big 3 networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, hail back to the earliest days of television, the late 30s and 40s, while Fox got started as the 4th major network 40-plus years later in 1986. Film studio 20th Century Fox had been involved with the television industry since the 1950s, but the fall of the Dumont Television Network hurt the production studio. They tried again creating original television content for NTA Film Network, which was originally to be heralded as the 4th network. 20th Century Fox continued to dabble in television through its production arm, TCF Television Productions, producing several hits such as Perry Mason. The Fox Network's foundations were laid in March 1985 through News Corporation's $255 million purchase of a 50% interest in TCF Holdings, the parent company of 20th Century Fox Film Studio. In October 1985, 20th Century Fox announced its intentions to form a 4th television network that would compete with ABC, CBS, and NBC. The Fox Broadcasting Company launched at 11 p.m. Eastern and Pacific Time on October 9, 1986. Its inaugural program was a late-night talk show called The Late Show, which was hosted by comedian Joan Rivers. This failed to challenge the incumbent Johnny Carson in The Tonight Show and quickly fell in the ratings. Many people don't remember that Fox really started out as a part-time network. The affiliates that carried their programming were on again, off again, especially with the failure of The Late Show. It wasn't until April 5, 1987, that Fox started to take the shape into the network we now know today, and even then it was only during primetime time slots Fox was airing content. Fox fully vetted out its primetime schedule across all 7 days by 1993. They started with the less risky Sunday night with 2 shows, Married with Children and the sketch comedy The Tracy Ullman Show. On September 8, 1991, they added Herman's Head to the Sunday night lineup. The original working title for Herman's Head was It's All in Your Head. Creators Andy Gurdott and Steve Kreinberg had first worked as writers on the show It's a Living. In the midst of this writing stint, Gurdott and Kreinberg additionally landed their first job on the first-run syndication revival of 9 to 5. It was their experience in workplace comedy on 9 to 5 that led the two into situating Herman's Head largely in the same setting. The storyline revolved around Herman Brooks, a young bachelor fresh out of college. Coming from a quiet life and a large family in the Midwest, Herman lands his first job in New York City, a research analyst for a big firm called Waterton Publishing. Unknown to anyone else, scenes would often cut inside Herman's head, where a Greek chorus would comment on situations at hand. Herman's head had 4 personas: Angel, his sensitive side; Genius, who handled his responsibilities of life; Wimp, who worried about dangerous situations; and Animal, who represented Herman's party animal and free-spirited side. By keeping the overall plot arc simple, the power of the show really rested on the personas, with the ensemble cast providing situations for the characters to argue over. William Ragsdale, fresh off the heels of his feature film career of Tom Holland's Fright Night, the lesser-loved Fright Night 2, and of course the hard-to-please sequel to the cult film Mannequin called Mannequin on the Move, stars as Herman, the centerpiece of the show and repository of the 4 personas. Ragsdale's boyish looks and charm worked well as the fact-checker, and the character's sometimes innocence of city life worked its way into the equation. To keep Herman in trouble, we need a best friend and occasional wingman, Jay Nichols, played by Hank Azaria, man of 100 voices on The Simpsons, which started a couple of years earlier in 1989. Jay is essentially the playboy Larry of Three's Company type that is always chasing a girl, or 3 or 4, and dragging Herman into his wild schemes. From the long-running series Santa Barbara, Jane Sibbett provides the sexual office tension for the show as Hetty Newman. Gold-digging, superficial, often bitch of the show, Sibbett frequently lets her hair down to become almost a decent person, usually when dealing with her mixed feelings for Herman. Another Simpsons cast member, Yeardley Smith, also stars on Herman's head. Her unmistakable Lisa Simpson voice was even mentioned on the show as that girl from The Simpsons. Smith plays Louise Fitzer, assistant to the boss office, Mr. Bracken. Her role in the show is really to be the real-life sensitivity character, contrasting the callous Hetty, as well as giving support to the male characters like Bracken and Herman. Well-established actor Jason Bernard plays the brash but lovable Paul Bracken, Herman's insatiable boss and often father figure. Bernard is the legitimization feature of the show, giving a recognizable face and strong leadership to the cast in general. You may also remember him from the television miniseries V, which is most definitely a show we'll be covering here on repeat in the future. Bernard has been in the business since 1965. The 4 characters acting out Herman's emotions each represent a different aspect of his personality or psyche. As they were intended to be one-dimensional, they often lack in other areas of their character, which leads to frequent squabbles. The characters act in unison when Herman's body is affected, such as having to sneeze or crying out in pain after being punched in the stomach. They also team up and form factions amongst themselves. These characters exist in a large attic room filled with toys, a lit Christmas tree, a rose-covered bower, theater seats, neon signs, arcade games, pennants and memorabilia from Ohio State University, old furniture, and numerous file cabinets with labels like memories, fantasies, or sexual past. They watch films of past events and enact possible scenarios for what might happen in Herman's various life situations, occasionally venturing into Hammer horror movie territory, or, in the case of Animal, pornographic films. Angel, played by Molly Hagan, you may know her from iZombie and many other recent appearances on television, represents his sensitivity. As the only female character in his brain, Angel also represents his feminine side, and sometimes uses this fact to manipulate the male characters. She also clashes with Animal about how to treat women because she wants to treat them with sensitivity and kindness, and Animal just wants to have sex. Hagan may be the most prolific actor from Herman's Head, having done the most since her appearance there. Animal, portrayed by Ken Hudson Campbell, he was the heavy-set guy in the film Armageddon, represents his basic drives of lust and hunger. He's a character of a frat boy. In one episode, when Herman's personalities are assessing a sleazy man, Campbell in a dual role, dating Louise, Animal sticks up for him because this man looks and acts exactly like him. Campbell is still a consistently busy working actor, maybe even exceeding Hagan's work since departing Herman's Head. Wimp, performed by Rick Lawless, represents Herman's anxiety. He's a paranoid hypochondriac, and since he always expects the worst, he is often the best prepared to handle crisis when the others cannot decide. A much underappreciated character, in my humble opinion. Lawless hasn't done much since Herman's Head, nor did he do much after, Possibly my favorite moment is when he says that guest star Lita Ford would eat him alive, and when he doesn't appear later, Ford confirms she did indeed eat him alive. Genius Peter Mackenzie represented his intellect and logic and often clashes with Angel's naivety and Animal's stupidity. At times he can get overworked, as in one episode where Herman makes a ridiculous decision. Genius's face is blackened by soot and he exclaims, quote, "I think I blew a fuse," unquote. Mackenzie still does television. Most recently is reoccurring on the show Blackish. Along with the 4 regular emotions, we had some guest psyche appear. Bobcat Goldthwait as Jealousy only appears once when Herman and his sister find themselves in competition for a job. He causes so much confusion and chaos that the original 4 selves throw him out the door, followed by a hand grenade. God shows up once in the form of Leslie Nielsen, a guest star in an episode where Herman has a fling with a married woman, which both had come to regret. God's appearance to the 4 was also due to the fact that Herman's uncle was undergoing major surgery and his entire family had been praying over it, save for Herman. When Genius protests that, quote, "You're not God, you're Leslie Nielsen," unquote, God says that everyone has their own idea of his personal appearance and, quote, "You, Herman, picked me, Leslie Nielsen," unquote. Herman's Head ran a total of 3 seasons with 72 episodes, 28 shy of syndication consideration. While I couldn't find exact ratings, it was poor rating turnout that doomed the show in season 3. The show's last episode, First Impressions, aired on April 21st, 1994. While not really an official series closer, the last episode had Herman hit by a car and put into a coma. While he is under, the actors that play his personas are characters in the actual show, outside of his brain. William Ragsdale shows up in the attic and tells all of his neurological performers that he isn't going to quit on them. Herman wakes from the coma, which maybe he wouldn't have if it was a proper closer episode, and things seem to go on, but the show never made it to season 4. At this point of the repeat episode, we would normally tell you about all the behind-the-scenes goodies and production notes, but this is where things get interesting about Herman's Head. Based on what you find on the internet, Herman's Head almost didn't exist. The show has never appeared on any home media format, not VHS, not DVD, nor has it appeared ever on any streaming service. Well, that certainly doesn't cry out conspiracy theory. Other things might. The cast rarely to never talks about the show in interviews. Normally you can find a little hidden tidbit here and there, but even if you do have awesome researching powers like we have at Repeat, there's very little to be found. In fact, most of the cast seems to shrug it off when asked, sometimes even making callous brief mentions. Every now and then, it will get mentioned on The Simpsons. The show almost appears to be a pariah, like somebody went out and intentionally scrubbed the information online to offline. If you look deep enough, you'll find a conspiracy theory floating around that Herman's Head is under lock and key because of the 2015 Disney Pixar CG film Inside Out. Inside Out pretty much stole fizzy lifting drinks from Herman's Head. Of that, few disagree, from critics to fans alike. The theory is that Fox may have tried to go after them, but the Mouse House either paid them off or had more and better lawyers at the time. Even if you consider the couple-year lead time on Inside Out, 20 years of silence on Herman's Head doesn't make any sense. Maybe the cast is embarrassed about their participation? Hank Azaria has expressed his displeasure about the show publicly. Perhaps he has more influence at Fox than we know, and he wanted the show dead and buried, leveraging his Simpsons clout to keep it deep-sixed. During an AMA with Azaria, he said, quote, "I'm always a little surprised that people like that show. I guess it was fun, and I certainly loved making it, and I learned a lot, and I was grateful for the job, and I loved all the people involved with it, but to be honest, the show was never my cup of tea. I feel bad saying that because I'm glad you liked it, but it's the truth," unquote. In interviews with William Ragsdale, he says cookie-cutter generic things, and those interviewing him never seem to follow up with anything of note, as if they've been told not to ask too much about Herman's Head. Even 25 years later, the show has a decent following on the internet, asking for DVDs or streaming versions to be available. Horrible quality bootlegs from poor LP recorded VHS tapes are being swapped and sold online, and many, if not all of those terrible copies are on YouTube right now. But when I say terrible, that is probably overselling the condition of the recordings. I can personally understand the show not going to physical media, but it's a pretty cheap win to go streaming, provided there's nothing sinister going on. The show did have a couple of great moments of guest stars, though, along with the aforementioned Lita Ford, Bobcat Goldthwait, and Leslie Nielsen. We saw Bob Denver and Don Wells from Gilligan's Island, Patrick Ewing, Gilbert Gottfried, Marie McCormick, and even Jennifer Aniston. The angel herself, Molly Hagan, has shared a couple of things about the show purely from a technical point of view. When asked if the head personas shot in front of a studio audience as well as the main show, she said, quote, "Yes, we did it simultaneously. For anyone who's been on a multi-camera sitcom set, there's a live studio audience, and there are 4 cameras that are on wheels that flip around, and there are mics that are on wheels that wheel around. And there are these different sets that are played on. The primary sets for Herman's head was his office, which was one half of the stage. Then on the other half of the stage was his brain, and another part was his apartment. His brain took up a lot of space, and it was a very deep set. There was all the stuff in his brain from the memories and all this junk on the stage. If they were filming in the office, there'd be a scene in the office and they'd come to some sort of a crisis for Herman or some sort of thing where we'd have to make a decision, and it would cut to the inside of the brain. All of a sudden, this 4th camera would fly over and catch us. Then we'd hear a snap and we were supposed to respond, and then the camera would whip over to the other side of the set and there'd be a snap and they'd continue. It was pretty simultaneous, and because of that, it was really fun and you really had to be on your toes." Unquote. Time for some Hollywood trivia for you. A multiple camera setup consists of multiple cameras arranged to capture all of the different camera angles of the scene simultaneously, and the set must be lit to accommodate all camera setups concurrently. Multi-camera productions generally result in faster but less versatile videography, whereas the single camera setup is much more time-consuming and expensive, but gives the director more control over each shot. Most comedies on television today are single camera shot, which means you can often see disparities happening between camera angle takes. In Modern Family, you may see Phil smile during his angle, but when the angle shifts to Claire just a half a second later, he is straight-faced. Single camera shows are pretty easy to pick out. Apparently, the writers of the show had future plans for Herman's Head. When Herman's Head was still on the air, one of the writers was a regular contributor to an online BBS forum devoted to Fox shows. He had stated in the forum that if the series were to continue for a 4th season, that 4 new head characters were going to be added for Hetty, so that viewers could see the inner workings of her head. Thus, a new angle to the show would have been added, and it would have been finally understood what made Hetty tick and what motivated her to be such a haughty and manipulative, bitch. Her head activity would have run in tandem with Herman's. That's something I would have wanted to see. During the November 17, 1991 broadcast of Herman's Head episode Near Death Wish, the very first commercial advertisement for condoms aired in the United States. This landmark occurrence, along with the involvement of the series, was a question over a decade later on the Regis Philbin-hosted Who Wants to Be a Super Millionaire? During the 2012 U.S. presidential election, former Herman's Head actors Molly Hagan, Ken Hudson Campbell, and Peter Mackenzie reunited to make a video parody for the comedy site Funny or Die, titled Herman Cain's Head. It referenced then-presidential candidate Herman Cain. The video was true to the format of the original, in which it replicated the style of the opening credits for Herman's Head, as well as the interplay between the characters of Angel, Animal, and Genius. Rick Lawless's character of Wimp did not appear, nor was he referenced in the video. Lawless had been out of Hollywood for 12 years at the time of the parody. My guess is he left the business and wasn't interested in reviving the character. It's really a shame because, as I noted earlier, he was a great part of the show. I was thrilled personally to see most of the cast back together, though. It really took me back. We love to talk about theme music and intros here on Repeat, but unfortunately, as with most things Herman's Head, the information is sparse. The introduction went through several changes. During the first season, there was a rather extended intro introducing Herman, his personas, and what their roles were, while the show credits ran on top of it. Here it is in its entirety.
This is Herman Brooks.
Herman is just like the rest of us. Every day he has to make all kinds of decisions. Like what to wear, whom to date, and when to panic. Now, these decisions should be easy, but if you take a look inside Herman's head, you'll see why he sometimes has trouble making up his mind.
I'm Herman's intellect. Without me, he couldn't hold his job, pay his rent, or tie his shoes.
I'm Herman's sensitivity. Without me, he wouldn't feel tenderness, honesty, or love. The good things in life.
I'm Herman's anxiety, and I keep him out of trouble. And believe me, there's trouble everywhere.
I'm Herman's lust. Without me, he'd miss out on all the good stuff. You know, fun, food, babes.
Sometimes they agree. Usually they don't. But this struggle is going on inside all of us. And it's all going on inside Herman's head.
This same extended intro was used on the first episode of Season 2 and was replaced by a more character-driven one with less focus on the head characters. The music bed was a jazzy saxophone number. Let's take a listen.
City is exciting.
Dangerous.
Troubled.
That woman's not wearing underwear.
Is that all you can think about? Food and sex?
Yes. Please, focus. Look out!
No time for small talk. We're late.
Hetty, hold the elevator.
Hetty.
I think Louise is so sweet.
I think this woman is wearing underwear.
I think there's too many people in this elevator.
And I think you are all idiots.
That's gonna work.
For Season 3, the show changed to the format where the show started pre-credits, then rolled them in a couple minutes in. The jazzy music background was changed to, in my opinion, a much less pleasant version featuring a bee-boop-be-doop-bop female vocal version. Listen to it for yourself.
This city is exciting.
Dangerous.
Troubled.
That woman's not wearing underwear.
Is that all you can think about? Food and sex?
Yes. Please, focus.
Look out!
Hey, it's Jack.
No time for small talk. We're late.
Hetty, hold the elevator.
Hetty.
I think Louise is so sweet.
I think this woman is wearing underwear.
I think there's too many people in this elevator.
And I think you are all idiots.
That's gonna work.
Regardless of season, the music was definitely nothing to write home about, and no one is interested in humming it 25 years later. Still, I personally felt that Season 2 was the best of the 3-season intros. Herman's Head isn't available in any legitimate format, streaming, DVD, or Blu-ray. If you want to see this show, you have to wade through crappy VHS bootlegs on YouTube or pick up a bootleg set of DVDs on the internet. The show is a legitimate part of television history and oddly enough continues to stay relevant even into the 2010s despite the brownout of information on it and its overall unavailability. It's a true travesty that Fox treats one of its historical cornerstones with such obvious disdain. Despite its love-hate relationship with the audience and critics, Herman's Head let me see Charlie Brewster on the little screen and made me literally LOL before there was even such a thing as LOL. I still quote it from time to time and think back fondly to a time when television was still television.
That woman's not wearing underwear.
Is that all you can think about? Food and sex?
Yes.
Each episode of Repeat is the result of nearly a dozen hours of research, writing, recording, and producing. If you enjoy this body of work, consider contributing to the show on Patreon, a service which provides digital artists a means to be compensated for their creativity. Visit www.patreon.com/repeat for more information. I'm Shane R. Monroe. Thank you for listening to Repeat.